On Christmas night, my parents turned my 10-year-old daughter away at the door. They said there wasn't enough space, so she walked home alone in the cold, carrying every gift she had brought. Past houses filled with laughter, music, and people who wanted each other. When I got home, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with burnt food on the stove, still wearing her coat, trying not to take up space in her own house. She didn't cry, she didn't complain, she just said, "I didn't want to bother anyone." When I found out what my parents had done, I didn't scream. I didn't confront them. I made one quiet decision instead. And before the night was over, everything they believed they owned, their house, their authority, their control, began to slip away. I got home later than I planned on Christmas night, keys cold in my hand, already picturing an empty house. Maya was supposed to be at my parents' place on Cedarbrook Lane. Big dinner, too many desserts. Her cousin Owen bragging about his new games. The kind of Christmas that made a kid feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves. I dropped her off that afternoon and watched her walk up the steps carefully, gift bags clutched in both hands like they were fragile. So when I opened the door and smelled something burnt, my first thought wasn't panic. It was confusion, not the sharp smell of toast left too long. This was heavier, sadder, like someone had tried very hard and failed quietly. "Maya?" I called. "In here," she answered right away. Too fast, too controlled. I stepped into the kitchen and saw the pan on the stove, blackened beyond saving. One plate on the table, crumbs scattered in a thin line as if someone had been moving slowly, carefully, trying not to make a mess. Then I saw her shoes by the door, lined up neatly, perfectly. My chest tightened. Maya was sitting at the table in the same sweater she'd worn when I dropped her off hours earlier. Her shoulders were hunched inward, arms folded close to her body like she was trying to disappear into herself. She wasn't crying. That was the part that scared me. "You're supposed to be at Grandma and Grandpa's," I said gently. "I know," she said. Her voice sounded practiced, like she'd rehearsed it until it didn't shake anymore. "Why are you here?" She stared at the edge of her plate for a long second. Then she said, "They said there wasn't enough space." The words didn't make sense at first. My brain refused to accept them. "Not enough space?" I repeated. "For what?" She looked up at me then, and there it was, the thing that broke my heart clean in half. For me, that's when I noticed the gifts. Every single one of them was stacked by the door, bags upright, tissue paper still fluffed and untouched. The tags were all still on, her careful handwriting looping around names she'd practiced for days. "Why are the gifts here?" I asked. "They didn't want them," she said. "They said I should take them back with me." Cold spread through my chest. "You walked home with all of this?" She nodded. "I didn't want to leave them there." "Why didn't you call me?" Her fingers tightened around the plate. "My phone died." "And theirs?" I asked. She said softly, "Grandma said it would just make it harder. Grandpa said it wasn't far, that I could walk, not far. Not far for an adult. Not far for someone who knew the way. Not far for someone who wasn't 10 years old, carrying bags that cut into her hands while passing houses glowing with light and laughter." "How long did it take you?" I asked. "Maybe 20 minutes. I got confused at first because we always drive." Something sharp lodged under my ribs and stayed there. I glanced at the stove. "You tried to cook?" Her cheeks flushed. "I got hungry, and I wanted it to feel like Christmas." She rushed the next part like she was afraid I'd be upset. "I watched a video. I followed the steps. It just burned." "I'm sorry." The fact that she thought she needed to apologize nearly undid me. I opened the window to clear the smell, then pulled out the chair beside her and sat down. "You don't apologize for this," I said, keeping my voice steady. She shrugged, small and careful. "I didn't want to bother anyone." Those words hit harder than anything else she'd said. I put my arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into me immediately, like she'd been holding herself upright on willpower alone. "Start from the beginning," I said. She took a shaky breath. "I rang the doorbell and Grandma opened it," she began. She looked surprised, like she forgot I was coming. Aunt Natalie was behind her. She said the house was already full. My jaw tightened. Owen laughed, Maya added quietly. He said my sweater looked like a blanket. And no one said anything? I asked. She shook her head. Grandpa said not to start drama. I closed my eyes for a moment. She swallowed. I tried to give Grandma my gift, the one I made. My heart clenched. She said not now, Maya whispered. She didn't even touch it. Tears finally slipped down her face, slow and silent. I pulled her closer, holding her while she cried into my shoulder. I ruined Christmas, she said. No, I said firmly. You didn't ruin anything. As I held my daughter in our quiet kitchen, something settled inside me with frightening clarity. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg for explanations. I was going to make sure this never happened to her again. And that night, without anyone else realizing it yet, the balance of power in our family began to shift. Maya fell asleep on the couch before I could convince her to move to her bed. Her head rested against my arm, her body still tense even in sleep, like she didn't fully trust rest yet. I stayed where I was, afraid that if I shifted, the moment would break, and she'd wake up remembering everything again. The kitchen light hummed softly behind us. I stared at the burnt pan on the stove and thought about how much effort it takes for a child to try that hard without asking for help. When I finally carried Maya to her room, she murmured something I couldn't make out. Her fingers curled briefly into my sleeve before letting go. I tucked her in, left the door slightly open, and stood there longer than necessary, watching her chest rise and fall. Only then did I let myself breathe. The quiet that settled over the house wasn't peaceful. It pressed in from all sides, heavy with things that hadn't been said. Things Maya had swallowed because she thought being quiet might make her easier to keep. I cleaned the kitchen slowly. Not because it needed to be clean, but because I needed my hands to do something that wasn't shaking. I didn't move the gifts by the door. I wanted to remember exactly how they looked. Neat, hopeful, unwanted. Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed. I almost didn't answer. But when I saw the name, my chest tightened in a different way. Beatrice Hollowell. Mama, I answered softly. Eliza, she said, brisk as ever. Why didn't Maya call me to say Merry Christmas? I closed my eyes. She tried, I said. Her phone died. There was a pause on the line. A long one. Put me on video, Beatrice said. I did. Her face filled the screen. Sharp eyes behind thin glasses, gray hair pulled back neatly. She scanned my expression first, then the room behind me. Where's the child? She asked. Asleep, I said. On the couch. She had a long walk. Another pause. This one colder. Explain, she said. I didn't soften it. I didn't protect anyone. I told her exactly what had happened. When I finished, Beatrice didn't speak right away. Then she said very clearly, "Wake her." Gently, Beatrice interrupted. I need to see her. I hesitated, then went to Maya's room. She stirred as I brushed her hair back. Sweetheart, I whispered. Mama wants to see you. Maya blinked sleepily at the phone screen. Hi, Great-Grandma. Beatrice's face softened instantly. Merry Christmas, my brave girl, she said. Maya smiled, small and careful. Merry Christmas. You didn't do anything wrong, Beatrice said, not wasting a second. Do you hear me? Maya's smile faltered. I tried to be good. I know, Beatrice said. That's the problem. You were good to people who didn't deserve it. Maya's eyes filled, and she nodded like the words were landing somewhere deep. Beatrice looked back at me. They used my house to do this, she said quietly. Didn't they? Yes, I said. Then they've forgotten what it was for. Before I could ask what she meant, Beatrice said, I'll handle it. The call ended shortly after. Maya fell back asleep almost immediately, her face softer than it had been all evening. I sat on the edge of her bed for a long time. The next morning, Maya woke early and padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Are you mad today? She asked. No, I said. I'm here. She nodded, absorbing that. I made hot chocolate instead of breakfast. Extra marshmallows. Trauma isn't the time for rules. She stared at the gifts by the door while she drank. Do you think they're mad at me? She asked. No, I said. But even if they were, That wouldn't be your responsibility. She frowned. It feels like it is. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. Feelings can lie. She thought about that for a moment. Then maybe this one is lying, she said. I smiled for the first time since Christmas night. Later that afternoon, while Maya colored quietly on the floor, my phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. We need to talk. I didn't reply. Some conversations only happen when everyone involved is ready to tell the truth. And some stories, like this one, only make sense when you stay with them long enough to see what silence is really doing behind the scenes. By the third day after Christmas, the shock had worn off. What remained was something heavier: recognition. Maya sat at the table doing a puzzle she'd already finished once, taking it apart just to put it back together again. She worked slowly, carefully, like she was afraid of getting something wrong even though there was no wrong way to do it. I watched her and felt the past rise up in me, uninvited. Because this hadn't started with her. It had only found a new target. When I was a child, my parents never said I was unwanted. They didn't need to. They were experts in implication. They praised Natalie for being easy, for being loud in the right ways, for needing less. Eliza was always so sensitive, my mother used to say, smiling like it was an affectionate flaw. Natalie just knows how to roll with things. What she meant was, Natalie didn't ask questions that made people uncomfortable. I had. When I got pregnant with Maya, unplanned and terrified, my parents didn't yell. They didn't have to. My mother's first words were, "And what exactly do you expect us to do about this?" My father sighed like I'd dropped a bill on the table and asked him to pay it. Natalie brought casseroles, advice, concerned looks that disappeared the moment anything required real effort. I raised Maya mostly alone. I worked hours that left me exhausted and grateful at the same time. I learned how to stretch meals, how to apologize to my daughter for being late without apologizing for existing. And through it all, one person never made me feel like a burden. Beatrice. She never asked why I wasn't more careful. She never suggested I'd ruined anything. She just showed up. She babysat when she could. Slipped grocery money into my coat pocket when she thought I wasn't looking. Sat on the floor with Maya and corrected her spelling like it was a sacred duty. As Beatrice's body slowed down, her clarity sharpened, and my parents' patience thinned. They started talking about her the way people talk about obstacles. "She's so stubborn," my mother would sigh. "It's hard to plan around her," my father would add. Meanwhile, they moved into the house on Cedarbrook Lane. Everyone called it their house. The house Beatrice had given them. Beatrice never corrected anyone. She didn't like conflict. She liked peace. And she trusted too easily that people understood the difference between generosity and ownership. After they moved in, visits to Beatrice became infrequent. Quick. Documented with photos and captions about family being everything. When she needed help, it was suddenly inconvenient. I became the one who took her to appointments, the one who learned how to help her stand without hurting her, the one who noticed how often she was left out of decisions about her own life. I should have seen it sooner. The pattern. How my parents treated people who depended on them. How Natalie learned to stay favored by staying aligned. How children, me, then Maya, were expected to adapt to the discomfort of others. Maya looked up from her puzzle. "Mom? Yes? Did I do something to make them not like me?" The question landed softly and shattered everything underneath it. "No," I said immediately. "You didn't do anything." She hesitated. "Then why do I feel like I did?" "Because you're learning from people who never took responsibility for their own choices." I pulled my chair closer and sat beside her. "Sometimes," I said slowly, "when adults don't know how to admit they're wrong, they let kids carry the feeling instead." Maya considered that. "That's not fair," she said. "No," I agreed. "It's not." That evening, I received another message from my mother. "Your grandmother is confused. You need to stop upsetting her." I stared at the screen, anger rising, and then something colder beneath it. Control. The same instinct that had told Maya to walk home quietly. The same instinct that had taught me to apologize for taking up space. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Beatrice. No answer. I waited 5 minutes. Tried again. Still nothing. My chest tightened, not with panic yet, but with certainty. Something was moving. And this time, it wasn't subtle. I tucked Maya into bed early. She asked if I could leave the hallway light on. Of course, I said. As I stood there watching her fall asleep, I realized something that made my hands shake. My parents hadn't just turned a child away. They'd used the same system they'd always used. The same quiet pressure. The same assumption of obedience. They just hadn't expected anyone to notice. I went back to the kitchen and stood in the center of the room, listening to the house breathe around me. The gifts were still by the door, unmoved, waiting. And for the first time, I understood exactly what was at stake. Not just for Maya, but for every version of myself that had learned to be smaller to survive. Whatever came next, I wasn't going to look away. Because patterns don't stop on their own. They stop when someone finally names them and refuses to carry them forward. I woke up before my alarm, the uneasy kind of awake that doesn't feel like rest at all. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I checked on Maya first. She was still asleep, curled on her side with the blanket tucked under her chin, hallway light spilling softly across the floor just like I'd promised. I watched her breathe for a moment longer than necessary, then closed her door gently and went back to the kitchen. I picked up my phone and called Beatrice again. No answer. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Beatrice wasn't glued to her phone. Sometimes she left it in a drawer and forgot about it for hours. Sometimes she turned it off by accident and swore the device was conspiring against her. Still, the feeling in my chest didn't loosen. I tried once more. Straight to voicemail. I was standing there staring at the screen when Maya padded into the kitchen, hair sticking up, eyes still heavy with sleep. "Did Mama call?" she asked softly. "Not yet," I said, keeping my voice light. "We're going to see her today, remember?" Maya nodded, but her shoulders stayed tight. After breakfast, we grabbed our coats and drove to Willow Court Residences. The parking lot was half empty, the morning gray and damp, like the day hadn't decided what it wanted to be yet. I knocked on Beatrice's door, waited, knocked again. Nothing. I tried calling her from the hallway. Still no answer. "Maybe she's sleeping," Maya offered. "Maybe," I said, already reaching into my bag. Beatrice had given me a spare key years ago, pressing it into my hand and saying, "If I don't answer, you don't knock. You come in." I unlocked the door. The apartment felt wrong the moment we stepped inside. Not messy, not disturbed. Just empty. Her favorite chair sat by the window, but the blanket she always kept draped over it was gone. The side table was bare where her glasses usually rested. The small overnight bag she kept by the door, always packed, just in case, was missing. My pulse kicked up. "Mama?" I called. No answer. Maya's voice came from behind me, small and careful. "Where is she?" "I don't know," I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. I stepped back into the hallway and knocked on the door across from Beatrice's. A woman in a robe answered, her face already lined with concern. "Oh," she said quietly. "You must be Eliza." "Yes," I said. "Have you seen Beatrice this morning?" Her mouth tightened. "Your parents were here. Early. Really early." My stomach dropped. "They had a car waiting," she continued. "Your grandmother was in her chair. She didn't look happy." "Did she say where they were taking her?" I asked. The woman shook her head. "I'm sorry." I thanked her because apparently politeness doesn't turn off even when your insides are screaming. Back inside the apartment, Maya stood clutching the strap of her bag like it was the only solid thing left in the room. "They took her," she said. I knelt in front of her immediately. "Listen to me. She's alive. She's okay. We're going to find her." Maya nodded, trusting me in the way only children do when they don't have a better option. I knew exactly where they'd taken her. Cedarbrook Lane. The drive felt endless. Every mile stretched thin, my thoughts racing ahead to what I might find, what I might have to do. Maya stared out the window, quiet but alert, like she was bracing for impact. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, the house looked the same as it always had. Warm, normal, innocent. I parked and got out before the engine even finished shutting off. I knocked hard. The door opened and my mother stood there, already defensive. "Where is Beatrice?" I asked. She's resting, my mother snapped. Lower your voice. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to see her. You're not upsetting her, she replied, stepping into the doorway. After everything you've done, I didn't do anything, I said. You took her without telling me. She's confused, my mother insisted. She needs calm. Then let her tell me that, I said. Let me hear it from her. No. That single word landed like a locked door. Something inside me went still. This wasn't family disagreement anymore. This was control. I pulled my phone from my pocket. What are you doing? My mother demanded. I'm calling for help, I said. Maya slipped her hand into mine. And for the first time since Christmas night, I stopped wondering if I was overreacting. I knew exactly where the line was, and I knew they had crossed it. I didn't wait for my mother to finish whatever explanation she was preparing. I stepped past her. She reached for my arm, fingers closing around my sleeve. Not hard, not violent, just firm enough to remind me that she believed she still had the right. Don't, she warned. I shook her off. Mom, I said evenly, if you touch me again, I won't hesitate. Something in my voice must have landed because she stepped back. The house smelled like coffee and pine cleaner. Familiar. Too familiar. It made my stomach twist. How normal everything looked while something was so deeply wrong. Maya, stay right here, I said quietly. She nodded, staying close enough that I could feel her presence like an anchor behind me. Beatrice? I called. No answer. My mother moved ahead of me, blocking the hallway with her body. She's resting, she repeated, louder this time, like volume could make it true. I need to see her, I said. Now. You're upsetting everyone, she snapped. You always do this. You come in and create drama. I looked at her, really looked at her. You took an elderly woman from her home without asking, I said. You refused to let my child inside on Christmas, and you're still talking about me being dramatic? Her mouth opened, then closed. Behind her, a door creaked. Is that Eliza? Beatrice's voice floated down the hallway, thin but clear. I felt my knees weaken with relief. Yes, I said, moving forward. My mother tried to stop me again. This time, I didn't slow. Beatrice was in the guest room, sitting upright in her wheelchair. Her coat was still on. Her purse rested in her lap, strap wrapped tightly around her wrist like she'd been afraid to let go of it. Her eyes snapped to me the moment I entered. There you are, she said. Maya ran to her without waiting for permission. Beatrice reached for her immediately, pulling her close with surprising strength. I didn't want to worry you, Beatrice said, voice tight. They said it was just for the day. For the day, I repeated. My father appeared in the doorway then, hands raised like this was all some misunderstanding. Everyone needs to calm down, he said. This got out of hand. You took her, I said, without telling me. She needed supervision, he said. You're not equipped. I laughed once, sharp, uncontrolled. I've been caring for her for years, I said. You visit when it's convenient and call it involvement. Beatrice straightened. I told them I didn't want to come, she said. They didn't listen. My mother waved a hand dismissively. You were upset. I was clear, Beatrice replied. The room went still. I took a breath and pulled my phone out again. My hands were steady this time. I'm calling for assistance, I said. My mother's face drained of color. You wouldn't. I already am. I stepped into the hallway so the call could be heard clearly. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't editorialize. I stated facts. An elderly woman removed from her home without consent. Mobility equipment taken. Family members refusing access. The operator's voice was calm, grounding. We're sending someone, she said. My mother started pacing. My father muttered something under his breath. Beatrice watched them both, eyes sharp. You thought I was confused, she said quietly. That's the problem. You mistook inconvenience for incompetence. When the officers arrived, my parents shifted instantly, voices softening, hands smoothing hair, posture changing. Thank goodness, my mother said brightly. This is all a misunderstanding. The officer looked at Beatrice. Ma'am, are you okay? Are you here by choice? No, Beatrice said without hesitation. My father opened his mouth. The officer raised a hand. Ma'am? I want to leave, Beatrice said. With them. Maya squeezed her hand. The officers didn't lecture. They didn't argue. They made space. I helped Beatrice into my car. My mother stood on the porch, arms crossed, face tight with disbelief. You're tearing this family apart, she called out. I paused, looking at her for the last time that day. No, I said. I'm ending something that should have stopped a long time ago. The drive away from Cedarbrook Lane felt unreal. Beatrice leaned back in her seat, eyes closed. I'm sorry, she said softly. I didn't realize how far they'd go. You don't apologize, I said. You trusted people who didn't deserve it. Maya watched the house disappear behind us. Is she coming home with us? She asked. Yes, I said. Maya nodded, relief flooding her face. Beatrice opened her eyes and looked at me then. Call my lawyer, she said. Today. I did. And as the phone rang, I understood something with sudden clarity. The door that closed on my child had led us here, and there was no going back over that line. Beatrice's lawyer agreed to see us that same afternoon. Not after the holidays, not next week, that afternoon. His office sat on the second floor of a brick building downtown, above a closed bookstore with a faded sign still clinging to the window. The elevator rattled on the way up, and Maya pressed close to Beatrice's side, fingers hooked through the armrest of the wheelchair like she was afraid someone might pull it away again. The lawyer's name was Thomas Reed. He didn't smile when we entered, but he did stand. He greeted Beatrice first. Are you comfortable? He asked. As comfortable as I ever am, she said. Let's be efficient. He nodded and turned to me. I'm going to explain something your parents have been calling a gift. He slid a folder across the desk and opened it with care. The house on Cedarbrook Lane, he said, is not owned by your parents. My breath caught. It's held in Beatrice's living trust. He continued. Your parents were named beneficiaries. That means they were scheduled to receive the property after Beatrice's death. Until then, they had permission to live there. Nothing more. Beatrice made a soft, humorless sound. They've been treating permission like ownership. They often do, Reed said. Maya looked up at Beatrice, confusion creasing her forehead. Does that mean they can't keep you? No, Reed said gently. It means they never could. Something loosened in Maya's shoulders. She leaned into Beatrice without realizing it. Reed asked Beatrice a series of straightforward questions. Did she understand what changes she was making? Was anyone pressuring her? Did she feel safe? Beatrice answered crisply, offended by the implication that her mind needed defending. I want the beneficiaries changed, she said. Today. That can be done, Reed replied. We can also adjust other assets, savings, accounts, distributions. All of it, Beatrice said. I'm not interested in rewarding behavior like that. I sat very still, afraid that if I spoke, I might cry. The printer hummed. Papers slid out, one after another. Reed explained where to sign, where to initial. Witnesses entered. Pens moved. The sound of ink on paper felt louder than it should have. When it was finished, Reed stacked the documents neatly. We'll also prepare a notice to begin reclaiming the property, he said. It won't be immediate, but it will be official. Beatrice nodded. Good. Maya watched everything with solemn attention. When Reed stepped out to make copies, she looked up at Beatrice. Are you in trouble because of me? She asked quietly. Beatrice turned to her at once. No, sweetheart. You're the reason I finally stopped pretending everything was fine. Reed returned and handed me a card. If they contact you, document it. Don't engage. I nodded. Outside, the afternoon light had shifted. The air felt different. Lighter, maybe. Or maybe that was just my chest no longer carrying the same weight. Beatrice stayed with us that night. We set up the guest room. Maya insisted on sleeping on the floor beside the bed. Just in case. Beatrice protested, then relented, and Maya fell asleep almost instantly. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening to both of them breathe. My phone buzzed. Missed calls, voicemails, messages that swung wildly from outrage to confusion to sudden politeness. I didn't answer. Later, as Beatrice rested, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the gifts still lined up by the door. I hadn't moved them. I hadn't known what to do with them. Maya wandered in, sleepy-eyed. "Can we give them to someone else?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "We can." She nodded, satisfied, and padded back to bed. The next morning, an envelope arrived. Heavy paper, legal language, the beginning of timelines. Beatrice read it calmly over breakfast. "They'll be angry," she said. "They already are," I replied. She looked at me over the rim of her mug. Anger isn't power. It's what people reach for when they've lost it. That afternoon, Maya went back to school. I walked her to the bus stop even though she'd done it alone for years. She didn't comment. She just slipped her hand into mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. That evening, her teacher called. "She's quieter," she said kindly, but not withdrawn. Just careful. Careful. I hung up and felt the words settle in my chest like a stone. At dinner, Maya pushed her food around her plate. "If they say sorry," she asked, "does that mean everything goes back?" "No," I said gently. "An apology doesn't erase what happened." She considered that. "Good." Beatrice smiled faintly. "Learning that early saves a lot of time." That night, as the house settled and the day finally released its grip on me, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think yet. This wasn't just about a house, or money, or being right. It was about removing access to people who had proven they didn't know how to use it. And once that door closes, it doesn't swing open again just because someone knocks louder. The change didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It came the way truth usually does. Slow, undeniable, and impossible to ignore once it's settled. The first official notice was delivered 3 days later. Thick paper, careful wording. The kind of language that didn't threaten or beg, just stated facts and timelines. Beatrice read it at the kitchen table while Maya colored beside her, humming softly under her breath. "Is that the paper that makes them leave?" Maya asked without looking up. "Eventually," Beatrice said. "Right now, it's the paper that reminds them they never owned what they thought they did." Maya nodded, as if that made perfect sense. My parents tried a different approach after that. The calls stopped. The messages changed. Long emails arrived instead, measured, carefully phrased, full of words like misunderstanding, family, overreaction. My mother apologized without apologizing. My father spoke about fairness as if it were something owed to him. I didn't reply. Silence, I was learning, wasn't avoidance, it was clarity. Maya returned to school that week. I walked her to the bus stop again, even though she didn't ask. She slid her hand into mine automatically, fingers warm and sure. At dinner that night, she told us about her day. "I raised my hand," she said casually, "twice." "That's impressive," I said. "One boy laughed when I started talking," she added. "So I kept going." Beatrice looked at her over her glasses. "Good." Maya smiled, proud but not loud about it. Later, after Maya had gone to bed, Beatrice sat beside me on the couch. The house was quiet in that new way. Safe, but still alert. "They're not angry because of the house," she said. "They're angry because they lost the story they told themselves." I nodded. "They thought silence meant agreement," she continued. "They mistook patience for permission." That night, a handwritten letter arrived. My mother's handwriting, neat, careful, familiar. Maya watched me open it. "Do I have to read it?" she asked. "No," I said. "You don't owe anyone your attention." She nodded and went back to her book. I read the letter alone later. It was full of regret-adjacent phrases. If things felt hurtful. If we misunderstood. One vague apology buried in the middle, light enough to avoid responsibility. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Some words don't earn space on the table. The legal process moved forward quietly in the background. Thomas Reed updated us with brief calls, each one tightening timelines and closing gaps. "They're still assuming this will reverse," he said once. "They haven't adjusted yet." "They will," Beatrice replied. One evening, my mother showed up unannounced. She didn't knock. She rang the bell twice, then again. I opened the door but didn't step aside. "You can't keep Maya from me," she said immediately. "I'm not," I replied. "You did that yourself." Beatrice came into view behind me. My mother stiffened. "You turned a child away. Beatrice said calmly. Then you took me without consent. You don't get to define family after that. My mother's voice dropped. You're ruining us. Beatrice shook her head. No, I'm correcting you. Maya stepped forward before I could stop her. You didn't say sorry to me, she said quietly. The silence that followed was absolute. I didn't know what to say, my mother finally replied. Maya nodded. I do. She took a breath. I don't want to see you anymore. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was final. My mother left without another word. That night, Maya slept through until morning. Beatrice watched her from the doorway and said softly, Children understand boundaries faster than adults. They don't confuse love with access. I sat in the living room long after everyone else had gone to bed, scrolling aimlessly, thinking about how many stories like ours never get told, how many people learn to shrink and mistake it for peace. Sometimes staying with a story long enough is how you learn what safety actually sounds like. And sometimes, choosing to keep listening is how you make sure the right doors stay open. Spring arrived without ceremony. The trees along our street budded quietly, like they were waiting to be sure it was safe. Maya noticed first. She pointed them out on the walk home from school, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. They're not in a hurry, she said. I like that. So did I. The legal process kept moving, steady and impersonal. Thomas Reed called once a week with updates that sounded small until you listened closely. Deadlines confirmed, responses missed, assumptions corrected. They're still hoping for a pause, he told me one afternoon. People who think things belong to them often expect time to cooperate. Does it? I asked. No, he said. Time rarely does. A week later, Evelyn asked if we could drive past Cedarbrook Lane. I don't need to go inside, she said. I just want to see it while it still thinks it's theirs. We went in the late afternoon. The light was soft, forgiving. The driveway was empty. The house looked ordinary. No glow in the windows, no music, no movement behind the curtains. Evelyn studied it from the passenger seat, her expression unreadable. They confused shelter with power, she said finally, and power with love. Maya leaned forward between us. Does the house know it's changing hands? Evelyn smiled. Houses don't know anything. People do. Maya nodded. Then I'm glad people don't live there who don't know how to share. We drove away without stopping. 2 days later, the locks were changed. The confirmation came in an email from Reed. Brief, professional, final. The phone didn't ring after that. No surprise visits, no letters, no messages trying to soften the past. Silence at last felt complete. Life didn't suddenly become easy, it just became possible. Maya still startled at loud voices on television, still checked my face before asking for things she wanted, still apologized too quickly when she took up space by accident. But the pauses between those moments grew longer. One evening, she asked if she could invite a friend over. For a sleepover, she added quickly. But it's okay if that's too much. It's not too much, I said. Who's coming? She blinked. You don't need to know? I don't need to be afraid of it, I said. Her smile spread slowly, like she was testing whether it would stay. That night, our living room filled with whispers and laughter and the sound of 2 kids trying not to giggle too loudly past bedtime. Evelyn sat at the table nearby, pretending to read while correcting their grammar mid-sentence. Prepositions matter, she said sternly. Maya laughed. A full laugh. Unfiltered. I felt something loosen in my chest. Later, after her friend had gone home and the house had settled again, Evelyn brought out a box of old photo albums. These are yours, she said, sliding one toward me. I flipped through pictures of myself at Maya's age. Careful smiles, stiff posture, hands folded like I was bracing for instruction. You look like you're waiting, Maya observed, peering over my shoulder. I think I was, I said. Evelyn tapped the page. You don't owe anyone that version of yourself anymore. Neither do you, I thought. The next weekend, Maya helped Evelyn water the plants on the porch. She spilled half of it and froze, eyes darting to see if she'd messed up. Evelyn waved her off. Plants like a challenge. Maya relaxed. It was in the small moments that I noticed the most change. Maya leaving her shoes wherever she wanted. Maya correcting me when I interrupted her. Maya asking for seconds without waiting for permission. One afternoon, she brought home a school assignment. Write about a place where you feel safe. She worked on it quietly for 2 days. When she was finished, she handed it to me without explanation. I read it standing at the counter. Safety is when nobody asks you to be smaller, she'd written. It's when doors stay open and you don't have to earn your place by being quiet. I looked up and found her watching me carefully. Is it okay? She asked. It's perfect, I said. She smiled and went back to her room. That night, as I turned off lights and locked doors, I paused by the window and looked out at the street. Lights flickered on in neighboring houses. Cars passed. Life moved forward, indifferent and steady. Behind us, somewhere across town, a house stood silent. No longer a stage for control, no longer a place where a child learned she didn't belong. Here, the quiet felt different. It wasn't waiting. It was holding. And for the first time in a long while, I let myself believe that this ordinary, imperfect peace wasn't temporary. It was earned. Summer arrived without asking permission. It came in long afternoons and open windows, in the hum of cicadas and the smell of warm pavement after rain. Maya started leaving the front door open when she played on the porch, darting in and out like the house was something she trusted to wait for her. I noticed it one evening and froze. Then I made myself breathe. Beatrice noticed too. She's testing permanence, she said, not unkindly. That's what happens when safety stops feeling conditional. Maya changed in ways that were easy to miss if you weren't looking for them. She stopped lining things up so carefully, stopped apologizing before asking questions, stopped checking my face to see if her feelings were allowed before she spoke them out loud. Some days she still hesitated, still caught herself shrinking, but now she corrected course, like she was learning a new language and forgiving herself for having an accent. One afternoon, Thomas Reed called with what he called final housekeeping. Everything that can be closed is closed, he said. The rest will resolve on its own timeline, but there's nothing left for you to do. I thanked him and hung up. Maya looked up from the floor where she was sprawled with markers. Is that the end? It's the end of that chapter, I said. She considered this, then nodded. Good. I like the next one better. Beatrice chuckled from her chair. You haven't even read it yet. I don't have to, Maya replied. I know who's in it. That night, we talked about family. Not in the heavy, careful way I'd grown up with. But honestly, do you think they miss us? Maya asked, tracing the seam of the couch cushion. I think they miss what they had access to, I said. That's not the same thing. She thought about that. I miss the idea of them, she said, but not how I felt. That makes sense, Beatrice said. Grief doesn't always mean loss. Sometimes it means clarity. Maya nodded, relieved that someone had put words to it. At school, she signed up for a presentation she didn't tell me about until the permission slip appeared in my bag. It's about something that changed you, she explained. I want to talk about Christmas. My stomach tightened. You don't have to. I know, she said. I want to. She worked on it for days, writing and crossing things out, reading it aloud to herself behind her bedroom door. I didn't hover. I trusted her to know what she was ready for. The night before she presented, she asked if she could read it to us. Beatrice sat straight. Proceed. Maya stood in the middle of the living room, paper trembling just a little in her hands. When someone shuts a door on you, she read, voice steady. It doesn't mean you're too big. Sometimes it means they were afraid to make room. She looked up at us. Sometimes, she continued, you learn to be quiet so you won't be sent away. But quiet isn't the same as safe. She finished without crying. I didn't speak right away because my throat had closed. That was excellent, Beatrice said briskly. Clear, direct, no unnecessary apologizing. Maya grinned. The next day, she came home lighter. I didn't cry, she announced. And nobody laughed. I'm proud of you, I said. She shrugged, trying to act casual. I think I was proud of me too. That evening, she asked if we could plan for next Christmas. It was early, months early, but there was no fear in the request. What do you want it to look like? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Quiet, but not lonely. Beatrice raised an eyebrow. With good food. And no doors, Maya added. I swallowed and nodded. No doors. Later, after Maya went to bed, I sat alone in the living room and let myself think about the house on Cedarbrook Lane, about how much space it had held, about how small it had made us feel, and about how easy it had been to confuse tradition with entitlement. Understanding, I realized, wasn't required for accountability. Some people never learn why they lose access. They only learn that it's gone. The windows were open. Summer air drifted in, carrying the sound of laughter from somewhere down the street. A door opened, closed, stayed closed. I turned off the lamp and headed down the hallway, pausing at Maya's door. It was open. She slept on her back now, limbs loose, breathing slow and unguarded. I stood there for a long moment, letting the image settle. The next chapter hadn't arrived yet, but we were ready for it, because we weren't waiting to be chosen anymore. We were already home. Next Christmas arrived without ceremony. No countdown. No rehearsed joy. Just a quiet morning and the soft scrape of snow against the sidewalk as neighbors walked past our house, bundled and unhurried. Maya was already awake. She sat cross-legged on the living room floor, arranging ornaments the way she liked. Clustered, uneven, unapologetic. The tree leaned slightly to the left this year. I'd meant to fix it. She told me not to. It looks like us, she said, still standing. Beatrice watched from the couch, mug in hand. Aesthetic honesty, she declared. I approve. Maya reached into a small box and pulled out the last ornament. A paper star, folded carefully, edges a little rough. She placed it near the center of the tree, exactly where she could see it from the couch, the kitchen, the hallway. So I don't forget, she said. Forget what? I asked. That I belong, she replied like it was obvious. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Soup simmered on the stove. Bread warmed in the oven. Nothing fancy. Nothing meant to impress. Just food that would be eaten by people who wanted to be there. We didn't talk about the past. Not because it was forbidden, but because it had finally stopped asking for our attention. Outside, windows glowed up and down the street. Doors opened and closed. Somewhere, someone laughed too loudly. Somewhere else, someone argued and slammed a door. Inside our house, no one flinched. After dinner, Maya disappeared into her room and came back with a small box. She handed it to Beatrice first. Inside was a drawing, 3 figures standing in a doorway, hands linked. The door was wide open. No shadows. No corners to hide in. Underneath, Maya had written in careful block letters, "This is what safe looks like." Beatrice cleared her throat. "I don't cry," she said. She dabbed her eyes anyway. Maya turned to me next. My box held a folded note. "Thank you for not making me smaller." I pulled her into a hug so fast she laughed, then hugged me back just as tightly, her arms sure and warm. Later, we settled into the living room with a movie playing quietly in the background. Something familiar, half-watched, the way comfort usually is. Maya leaned against me, feet tucked under a blanket. Beatrice dozed lightly, presence steady, anchoring the room. At one point, Maya shifted and looked around. "This is my favorite Christmas," she said. I kissed the top of her head and didn't answer right away. Some truths don't need sound. Outside, snow fell softly, the kind that makes everything feel slower. The streetlights cast pale halos on the ground. The paper star glowed in the tree lights, exactly where Maya had placed it, visible from everywhere. When the movie ended, Maya yawned and stood. "Door open or closed?" I asked. She thought for a moment. "Open." I left the hallway light on, just like she liked. As she disappeared into her room, I noticed something I hadn't before. She didn't look back to check if I was still there. She already knew. Beatrice stirred. "You did right by her," she said quietly. "So did you," I replied. She smiled. "I just made room." Later, after the house settled and the quiet wrapped itself around us in that familiar, gentle way, I stood by the window and watched the snow fall. I thought about the door that had closed on my child a year ago, about how easily power had mistaken itself for tradition, about how quickly it had fallen apart once it was questioned. Justice, I'd learned, doesn't need an audience. It needs follow-through. And if you're still here, if this story stayed with you longer than you expected, maybe it's because you know what it's like to wonder whether there will be room for you when you arrive. Sometimes, staying a little longer is how you learn what opens when you stop knocking. I turned off the last light and headed down the hallway. Maya slept with her door open, breathing slow and unguarded. This time, the quiet didn't feel like absence. It felt like arrival. And it was enough.